Okay. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the Fediverse and a particular thing on the Fediverse called Mastadon, a piece of software. And then in the second part of my talk, I'm going to build a little camera bot. So I'm going to show a little camera bot, which is a Raspberry Pi and a button and a Raspberry Pi camera that posts onto the Fediverse. So I'm not showing any slides. I'm just going to talk and then show you stuff in my browser. I'm going to start with a bit of internet history. So the old internet before, say, 2010 was a lot of different systems in different places, lots of different administrators, and sometimes they connected together. So you can think about email, for example. Someone on a corporate email system can email someone in Gmail because they are somehow connected, even though they're different systems. The web is another example. So you can have a web page running on someone's web server, and someone else can have another web server with web pages on it, and you can make links between those pages. But there isn't one central system. So in some sense, all of these web servers are equal. The web server I have running on my Raspberry Pi is an equal participant in the internet, just as much as Google's giant web servers are. And so you can think about them being somehow federated together rather than there being one big controlling system. But what's happened in more recent times is a lot of sites, especially social media sites, have pushed towards being walled gardens, they're often called. And the goal there is to keep users on your system. You don't want to interoperate with anybody else because you want to pull users to your system and stop them from leaving. You don't want them to link out somewhere else. If they want to talk to their friends, you want them to make their friend come and use your system, not interact with your friend's system. And one of the big drivers of that is advertising, for example, and data collection about users. So as soon as you leave my website, I can't show you adverts anymore. I can't make money off those adverts. So there's this pressure in that kind of system to try and keep people on your website. And along with that comes a lot of sort of weird social stuff. So a lot of the moderation, a lot of censorship is then aligned with what advertisers want to show. So there's sort of these jokes about prudish Americans that advertisers that really don't like nipples being shown. So you'll get your Facebook account banned if you happen to show a female nipple, but not a male nipple, for example, which fits the norms of particular corporate advertisers, but doesn't really fit what a lot of users would see as right or wrong. So there's a trend to move to well, there's a project called the Fediverse, and what that is how can we move things that look like social media, blogs, posts, things like that, back to a more federated model like email and like web hyperlinks look. So that's a movement that in part is technical to build software and protocols, and in part social to build communities and sites that work together. So there's lots of different software that participates in this. And what I'm going to show you mostly is a thing called Mastadon. Okay, so what you can see on your screen now, hopefully, is a particular Mastodon instance called Bots in Space. If I undo the sensitive comment, you can see hopefully a picture of me. And this is a post that my bot made later. So Mastodon kind of looks like a regular social media site. Here's some posts. I can make a new post. I can attach images. Fairly standard Facebook, Twitter, Instagram kind of behavior. But what's interesting is this is just one instance. If I go into another browser tab, assuming it hasn't crashed, here's another Mastodon instance. It looks the same. The URL is different up here. And this is an instance of Mastodon that I run for myself. There's the obligatory cat GIF. And so this instance can federate with bots in space. The other instance over here, if I come back here, I can find myself. Let's have a look, hopefully. Here I find myself. You gonna work? Yeah, there's me. So here I can see my profile. I'm following, this account is following me. There's all my posts that I made on my own instance that are visible on this bots in space instance. And so those are federated together. And there are hundreds or thousands of Mastadon instances just running independently in the world, and they exchange posts with each other. And you can follow people on other instances and make comments on each other's instances. So what you tend to get is instances that are themed around particular topics. So there's Berlin.social, for example, in Berlin has a there's a lot of German language stuff. It's a lot of people talking about what's happening in Berlin. There's one called types.pl, for example. Looks a little bit different. We can discover users. This is for people who are mostly interested in programming language research and mathematical type theory and that kind of stuff. So you sort of get these communities that are focused around particular topics, and maybe they have their own instances and they have their own rules, and you can still be a user on this, but follow me over on my instance. Okay, so I showed you those, but it doesn't have to be Mastodon. This is an open protocol, so just like you can on the web use your own browser, and just like for email you can use your own email client, you can have different instance software. So over here is a very different looking instance called diode.zone, and it's a instance, I can't remember what the software is called, PeerTube, and it's basically this is an instance that's designed for people posting tech videos. So if you imagine the kind of talks that Raspberry Pi generates, that's the sort of thing that people might post here. Here's my account. I have an account here as well. So here's a video of me, the official railway map of London and its environs, 1899. But if I go over to here, that video I posted is on my account here. Okay, so it's formatted differently because this Mastodon instance formats stuff in this timeline style. But that's the exact, that's the same post. If I make a comment, for example, hello Raspberry Pi, reply to that, hopefully over here, if it works, I can reload. There we go, hello Raspberry Pi. Okay, so so these are different instances, but they're sharing their posts and they're sharing their comments and they're sharing like counts and things like that, but they can still look very, very differently, So there's sort of this technical side to building your communities, which is what does our instance look like? What's the topic for our instance? And there's a lot of social discussion and a lot of social work, way more than you see on the big commercial sites, because people who run an instance can decide policy, they can moderate their own users, they can really shape and build their community how they want it to work, which you can't do if you're all just on Twitter or just on Facebook. It's a lot harder. You're much more beholden to the corporation, essentially. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'll just give you a demo of what I'm going to make happen. So you can make a post. Here I can just type test post for Raspberry Pi. You can attach files. You could make a poll. You can change the privacy. So I can say this is public for anyone. It's only for my followers, or it's only for a specific person. There's a lot of care in the Fediverse about putting content warnings on things. So maybe for spoilers, or if it's about war or crime or politics, all kinds of things. So some people will put a content warning on every post they make. So, warning, okay, and I can declare the language and then publish that. And here we've got the example content warning. If I click show more, there's the post. So what I'm going to do in the next section, the hardware section, is make a little bot that does this. And you can see the kind of post it's going to make down here. Pictures of me. These very not very interesting pictures of me. Okay. So I'll just briefly talk about how do you find people here. On most Mastodon instances, there's a local timeline, which is what people are posting on this instance. This is a bot-friendly instance, bots in space. So most of what you'll see on the local timeline is weird robots posting stuff, hourly bats, for example, one bat picture every hour, or all kinds of weird stuff. You can also choose federated, and what appears here is posts that this instance knows about, that it knows from other instances that it's federated with. So if I'm following someone else and they make a post, it will appear for everyone in the federated timeline. But what's important about the Fediverse, part of what's important, is there's no global central view of everything. This federated view is only for servers that this instance knows about, and for users that this instance knows about. Okay. Okay, so you can run your own instance if you want. I know one person I know runs one on a Raspberry Pi. I don't particularly recommend running your own instance unless you really want to go to the effort of running your own stuff. That's mostly my advice for any self-hosting stuff. Don't do it. It's better to pay someone else to do it for you. You can pay about $6 a month, I think, to get your own instance hosted for you by some places, or you can use one of the existing community instances like I showed before. So if you were in Berlin, you could use berlin.social, for example. Yep, and you don't have to, if you're hosting, it doesn't have to be Mastodon. If you're a video person, you could host your own video site with PeerTube, this video sharing site, for example. Okay, so what I'm going to show you, if I just stop sharing for a minute, I'll show you the hardware. Is a little bit awkward to show you. Here's a Raspberry Pi Zero, and there's a little button that I've soldered onto the N2 GPIO pins. Oops, right, there you go. And it's got a Raspberry Pi camera stuck in it as well. And then all these connectors are just going to the monitor and the keyboard. And it's connected to the internet over the Wi-Fi. So what I want is, I'll share my screen again. Go to bots in space. All right, what I want to happen, let's see how well it works, is when I push the button, oops, sorry, it just rebooted. I moved it, the power fell out. Just let it reboot for a second. it's a Pi 0, so it's quite slow to reboot. Okay. Are we gonna wake up? I've upset it. Hold on. Where are we going? It's coming here. I wanted to do a live demo, so I really need it to be booted up. So give me a minute. Okay. Are you alive? Please be alive. Yeah, okay. So I'm SSHing into the camera, and I'm going to run the software I need to run. Okay, so back here in Mastodon, let me try and push the button. I'm going to push the button without it rebooting, I hope. There we go. And it will just take a second. And I hope, fingers crossed, there we go. There's the post just appeared. That's me. Okay, so I'm just going to talk through how I built this. So there's a couple of community things and consent things. Mastodon's really, or the Fediverse is right into consent and like proper user consent about things. So I don't want to build a camera that's just going to take pictures of random people walking by. It's only going to do it when you push the button. So hopefully there'll be if you're putting in a sign, you'd put a sign next to the button that says, when you push this button, your picture is going to go on Mastodon. And the other thing is I'm going to use an instance bots in space, which is specifically intended for people building bots like this. Some instances really don't want bots because they clutter up the timeline with stupid crap. But this one really does want bots. So the hardware I showed you was a Raspberry Pi and a button and the camera. So there's three things I need to do. I'm going to wait for the button to be pushed. Then I'm going to take a photo, and then I'm going to post the photo. So if I switch over to the SSH session here, there's a little script here I made called wait button, and you run it, and it just does nothing at all until I press the button, boop, and it exits. And that's written in Python. So it uses the GPIO 0 Python library. So these 4 lines of code here. I import the button. I say I import the button class. I say I want to have a button attached to GPIO line 21, which happens to be where I've connected it. And then I say wait for press, and this will wait for the press, and then it will just fall off the end of the program and exit when the button's been pressed. So pretty simple little module that I'll be able to call from the script. Doesn't make sense really to call it from the command line, but inside a script, I can just have it sitting there until bloop, it will exit. The next thing is to take a photo, And the command line I use for that is quite complicated. It's this line here, libcamera JPEG, output to a file called snap.jpg, and take it with these sizes. Okay, so if I run that command now, it will do some stuff on my screen in front of me. It's showing me the picture it's going to take, and it takes the picture, and you should see snap.jpg that it's taken a photo just now. You can see it happen just now because of the timestamp 2028. Okay, so I can put those in a script together and say, first wait for the button to be pressed, and then when it's been pressed, run that command line to take a photo called snap.jpg. And then the last bit, which is a lot more complicated, and the sort of interesting point of this bot, is to post it to a Mastodon instance. So first I need to get an account on Mastodon. I've done this already. It's called Ben Camera. It's what you're looking at now. And the way that works is generally you have to apply for an account. Bots in Space wants you to write a little paragraph about why they should give you an account, why you should approve it. And that's really to check that you're the right kind of person. You're not someone who's going to come on spamming, doing bad things. So most of these instances have a code of conduct, which you can find on the About page. Here's the code of conduct here. It's written usually, code of conducts on the Fediverse are usually written for people to read. They're not dense legal stuff. You're meant to be able to read and understand the conditions. So it says, for example, do not use bots to abuse other people. Okay. Open as many accounts as you want, but don't set up a bot farm. Please be kind to the servers. Okay. So don't put too many network requests in, and various things like that. For example, don't advertise too much. Don't just repost other news servers. So if you agree to all of that and you write that in your message to the moderators of this, and they approve your account after a few hours or a few days, and then you can log in, and then you can set up your profile. So you can set your profile picture. You can put a description in. I've said that it's owned by Benzi, which is my real Mastodon account. And then I can, the final setup thing I need to do is get an API key. So at the moment, you're seeing me interact with my account through a web interface. What I want to be able to do is interact through a shell script. So I can come to development, define a new application. It's going to be called example for Raspberry Pi. And I can choose what kind of permissions this account is going to have. Well, it needs to be able to post. So there's a lot you can give it very broad permissions or take away whichever permissions you want. I'm actually going to turn off all permissions for this account because I don't want you to be able to read the token that you're about to see. So here we go, example for Raspberry Pi, and you get a lot of stuff. You can edit the permissions for this token, but here's an access token. And this access token is something that I need to copy onto my Raspberry Pi so that my Raspberry Pi can also do stuff to my account. So if I was to copy that token, and I'll go back to the Raspberry Pi shell prompt, I need to paste that into a special format file here, which is the authorization header. So it says authorization bearer, and then here I would post that token. And that's what scripts here are going to use when they talk to bots in space to say, I'm allowed to post here. So I'll show you the rest of the script that I have. Take post photo. So I do wait for button, run libcamera to get the picture, and then I need to do two steps. One is I need to upload the picture, which I'm going to use a utility called curl, which will make an HTTP request to this particular URL. And when it will connect to this URL, and it will send two things. First, it will send a header that says I'm authorized to post to the Ben Camera account, and second, it will say here's a photo, snap.jpg. That snap.jpg is what's going to come out of this. So when you run this, if I just paste it and run it, what comes back is a big chunk of JSON, JavaScript object notation. And what all I care about from here is that it gave me an ID for what I just uploaded, this ID here. So what I can do is direct this into a file called media post, and I can use a tool called JQ, which is JSON query, to pull out the ID. So if I run that here, it will give me the ID, an ID number from what was just posted. And then I can make a second curl request. And the second curl request is going to make the actual post, or in Mastadon terminology, that's called a status. So I need to send the header again to say, it's me again. I'm still authorized to make posts and upload stuff to Bots in Space. And the text is going to be posted from a Raspberry Pi. I'm going to put a content warning on it that says this is a bot post from a camera. It's probably got people in it. And I'm going to attach some media. And the media I'm going to attach is this ID up here that I extracted from the previous step. That's all I need to do. So I'll show you the whole thing again. So I'm going to run this in a loop while true. So it's going to run forever until my Pi crashes. We're going to wait for a button press. We're going to take a photo. We'll upload the photo. We'll extract the photo ID. We'll upload a post that references that photo. And then we go back to the top of the loop again and wait for the button to be pressed again. Okay. So I'll do one example running. You can watch what it looks like. We can see it's waiting for the button to be pushed. If I push the button now, boop, there it runs the camera code. And it takes a few seconds to calibrate. Now it's running curl to upload the picture. It's extracted the media ID. And here it's run the code to the command line to post to status. And what has come back is another big pile of JSON, but actually I can ignore that. If I wanted to, I could get the post ID here and do other things, but I don't really care. Okay, and you can see it's gone back here at the bottom, back to waiting for a button. So if I go back into my Bots in Space account, 27 seconds ago, there's the picture that just got posted. But I can push the button again and you can see it happen again. It's about to take the picture. I'll look at it this time maybe. Okay, it should be doing the upload now, I hope. Fingers crossed. You're going to appear. There we go. Okay, good. So that's a pretty simple bot. I was quite pleased how few lines of code it took to actually implement this. I thought it was going to be a lot more complicated. But it's a kind of fun, useless little toy I just made for this talk. Okay. Are there questions in the chat?
Yeah, there was one at 8:22.
Okay, so I have an account on one instance. What instance stops operating? What happens to my account name? So the account names are all qualified. They look like email addresses. So that camera one is botsin.space. So every other instance can also have an account called Bensi Camera. The usernames are not globally allocated. So if the instance goes away, your account has gone away. The same as if your email server goes away, your email account has gone away. The Mastadon software is generally pretty supportive of letting you export your follower lists and import your follower lists into other instances and that sort of stuff. So they tend to be fairly friendly to giving you the tools to let you copy and migrate your account between instances. But your account still is based on an instance, and when the instance is gone, everything on that instance is gone. Yeah. Okay.
So they're so what are the advantages then? Are there like security based things that people like about this approach, or?
So the big thing is basically having user control and user consent. So it's very much a social construct, not a technical construct, but you do need the technical protocols to make the social stuff happen. So you can block people, you can have a community with, say you're going to say we're going to have no transphobia on my instance whatsoever, and that's this community's rule, right? You don't have to go to Twitter and try and persuade Twitter. We're not, all of Twitter is going to ban transphobia. That's how you stop transphobia appearing on Twitter, for example, or various other forms of objectionable content. But that can be decided at the instance level in these small communities, rather than there being one global rule. If you're a white male, you'll basically find this extremely hard to understand, because white men come from a position of privilege, right? So it's just like, what the fuck are you talking about? It's extremely hard for white men, which is the bulk of this meetup, to understand the social background of why you would not want objectionable content, because society is kind of structured around that.
Right. So I guess I'm going the other way as well. You could have, neo-Nazis like setting up their own instances.
Yeah. So actually, Donald Trump, he has truth.social, and that actually is a Mastadon instance that doesn't federate with anyone. And probably most people would not let his instance federate with him, even if he did have federation turned on. But yeah, so truth.social is Donald Trump's weird Mastodon instance. But when he said he was going to launch his own social network, they did it based on Mastodon, because it's open software that you can just get and run for yourself.
So does this mean that there's a bit of a, if somebody's allowed to, is deliberately not permitted to federate, does that mean you end up with a bit of a fragmented set of instances?
Yep. And that's a strength, not a problem, broadly.
It's just, I'm just thinking, if somebody says I'm on Mastodon, and then suddenly you find that they're not federated with whatever bit you're in of Mastodon.
Yeah,
very confusing.
You kind of, you can have as many accounts as you want. If you want to play with the Nazis, you can go on truth.social. If you want to play with people in other contexts, you can go on a different account. Right? There's a social forcing function to say your instance is crappy because it's full of Nazis. So don't go on that instance, go on a different instance. Or the instance admins have to tidy up their own instance so that people want to federate with it. It's like going into different pubs, right? Different pubs have different vibes, and they're all on the same street. And there's some.
I haven't bumped into the Nazi pub yet, but
yeah. Right.
So when you do your post,
yeah,
you're only using the token. You're not using the client secret and things like that.
No. So the client secret, I think, is if you're building apps that will let people log in more complicated ways, and I always get my head in a tangle around those. But for this, which is just one app that is only ever posting to my account, not to anybody else's account, it just needs that token.
Okay. So I'm doing some work with the Google API.
Yeah.
It's relatively complicated, but
yeah,
once you get it up and running, it works really well.
Yeah, there's all that kind of security has lots of like going backwards and forwards and passing tokens around and remembering stuff. So I kind of like just using this for simple stuff. This single token approach is pretty nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Cool. Any other questions? Anyone?
Hey, I apologize. I just stepped in.
Yeah.
Can you just say, and I deeply apologize. I'm very interested. Can you just say briefly what the topic you were talking about was?
I was talking about Fediverse and Mastadon stuff, and then I had a little bot which posts pictures
Okay.
of me when I post
And I'm kind of curious, are there more than 10 users on Mastodon at this point? Or
yeah, there are many.
I see.
There's a Mastodon user count that is pretty high.
Because I've heard so much about this. I'm trying to figure out what problem they're trying to solve. I mean, I can't tell if you're being facetious when you say not